reading today for our devotional thought is from Psalm 125. It's entitled, "The Lord Surrounds His People," a Song of Ascents. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved, but abides forever. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people, from this time forth and forevermore. For the scepter of wickedness shall not rest on the land allotted to the righteous, lest the righteous stretch out their hands to do wrong. Do good, O Lord, to those who are good, and to those who are upright in their hearts. But those who turn aside to their crooked ways, the Lord will lead away with evildoers. Peace be upon Israel. As you listen to Psalm 125 being read this morning, I'm not quite sure how you feel. I know there are many people this morning and they will feel excited and enthusiastic. Over the last day or so, we've been hearing about the birth of a baby girl, and we've also heard about a family who had a new baby boy born into their family. And I'm sure this morning those people are very excited about what's happened in their lives and about what this new baby will mean. But I realise there are other people this morning and they feel completely different. They feel desperately disappointed, discouraged, downcast, deflated, defeated. It's very easy to focus on our feelings, isn't it? But our feelings are not always accurate. And as these people make their way up to Jerusalem and as they recite and sing some of these psalms, then these people would have been focusing on facts. And it's important this morning for you to focus on the facts. And here we find in verse 1, the facts are these, that those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion. If you're trusting in the Lord this morning, then the first thing that I want you to see is that you're standing somewhere solid. And that's a real source of encouragement. The path that you're on is not perfect. It's often painful. It's problematic. And that's exactly how Jesus said it would be. Jesus said, "In this world, you will have tribulation." But he went on to say, "Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." And so the path, although it's not perfect, we are promised the presence of God and the peace of God, which passes all understanding. And the psalmist says, if you're trusting in the Lord, then you're like Mount Zion. You're standing somewhere solid this morning. Secondly, today, if you've got faith in Jesus Christ and you're trusting in the Lord, then you need to remember that God surrounds his people. Notice in verse 2, it says, as the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people from this time forth and forevermore. Just as the inhabitants of Jerusalem were surrounded geographically by mountains, the Lord surrounds his people. I was thinking just today that if you were to take a boat and put it into a very large lake and travel for a period of time on that boat until you reach an island, you step off the boat onto the island, you spend some time in the island, you walk around. But all around the island, of course, you're surrounded by water. And the moment you put your foot off the island, wherever you're located on the island, and you step off, you're stepping into the water. Well, we're surrounded by God's grace, by God's goodness, by God's love, by God's mercy. And everywhere we put our foot today, God surrounds us. We are his people. We're surrounded by his protection and by his perfect provision for us. And we're surrounded in this way, not temporarily, But the psalmist says in verse 2, we are surrounded eternally. It's forevermore. Just as that island is surrounded by an immeasurable amount of water, we are surrounded by immeasurable grace, the immeasurable forgiveness and goodness and mercy and kindness of eternal God. We're surrounded by God. And so if you're trusting in the Lord this morning, then you're standing on something solid. If you're trusting in the Lord this morning and you're one of his people, then you are surrounded, verse 2, by God's grace and mercy and goodness. And then by complete contrast, towards the end of the psalm, we're told that those, verse 5, who turn aside to their crooked ways, the Lord will lead away with evildoers. In other words, if you're not trusting in the Lord this morning, if you've not experienced his saving grace, his forgiveness, his mercy, then you're not surrounded by his goodness. And ultimately, the complete contrast in this psalm from the people who know God and trust God is this in verse 5, that the Lord is going to lead you away with evildoers. And so while some people in verse 1 are standing somewhere solid, while some people are surrounded by God's grace and mercy in verse 2, other people will be shut out of God's presence. I trust this morning that as you think about that, if you're not standing in the right place, then you will seek God's face and that you will put things right spiritually. And then you can be standing somewhere solid and you can be surrounded by God's immeasurable love. May God bless you and help you today.